Now, a teen charged in connection with a counselor's death at Lincoln Hills Youth Prison pleads not guilty. Prosecutors say 17-year-old Ryan Nyblom gave soap to 16-year-old Javarius Hurd to use in a planned attack on a female counselor who they thought was abusing her power. Nyblom is charged with felony murder and battery by a prisoner, both with party to a crime enhancers. The attack resulted in 49-year-old Corey Prue's death at Lincoln Hills Youth Prison. The criminal complaint states that Hurd threw the soap at the female counselor in the courtyard, then punched her and Prue. Prue hit his head on the pavement and was taken to the hospital where he later died. Javarius Hurd faces charges of first-degree reckless homicide and battery by a prisoner. He's being charged as an adult in that case. Court officials are waiting to schedule a future date for continued testimony for his preliminary hearing.